I would love to start. Yeah, I would first love to start by inviting you to close your eyes and putting one hand or both hands on your heart. Take a deep belly breath in. When you think you've reached the top, sip in a little more and exhale it out. Let's do two more of those. Inhale, sip in, exhale. Last one, inhale, sip in, pour it out. Keep your eyes closed for just a moment longer. And I just want to set an intention for this episode. There are absolutely no right questions and no right answers, just honest ones. May we really just relish in this moment together that we get to share and express our heart as openly as possible. And may the message that ends up becoming whatever the message is today land on the ears of anyone and everyone who needs it. Great. Whenever you're ready, you can release your hands down and come back into our little space.
Beautiful.
Welcome, George, to the Monsoon Season Podcast. I want to introduce everyone to you. For those of you who don't know, George is an incredible friend and mentor of mine, and he's a creative freedom coach, a meditation teacher, an artist, a creator, a mystic. He has all these titles, and also none of them is so much more than the titles. But what George has done for me, what you've done for me, George, is you've helped unlock something inside of me to unleash creativity that I didn't know was possible. And you've helped me remove the biggest obstacle in my journey, which is myself. Getting out of my way so that I could just show up exactly how I am. And I'm just really grateful that you're here. Yeah,
I'm very grateful to be here, Aisha.
awesome. Amazing. So I'd love to also start by saying, George, and this is my honest opinion, I feel like you are someone who is so deeply open online. And so, like, you're an open book, you really freely share yourself online. Yet I feel like you're also very much an enigma. Like, I have a lot of people, I feel like there's just a lot of mystery around you, even though you are so open. And so today, I don't really have a goal into trying to morph you into anything but yourself, but I do want to kind of get under the hood a little bit deeper and then understand, I guess, maybe who is this human under all of the creator, the titles, the coaching, the meditations, all of that. I feel like you're Keanu Reeves. You're like everywhere. Everybody loves you, but we still have no idea who you are now. You've mystified us for decades, but so yeah, I'm excited to kind of get to know you from that kind of viewpoint. So I wanted to start today simply by asking, how's your heart?
Oh, that's a great question. It's pretty good. It's very nice, specifically right now, especially after you grounded us here. I feel like I'm in your container, so my heart feels very calm, gentle, and open.
Beautiful. That's a great place to be.
It's nice.
The first question I want to ask for a lot of people who don't know your work is could you share like what does creative freedom mean to you and how does one claim creative freedom?
Yeah, it's a great question that my answer is evolving every day.
Mhm.
I'm actually not even sure I love the label creative freedom anymore. And my labels are also evolving very quickly, but I'll still answer the question. I think what creative freedom means is a state of total authenticity. So the whatever creativity wants to come through you, you are free to allow it to come through you. And this can look, when I first discovered the label creative freedom and it resonated with me and the work I do and what I care about, I thought at the time that it had very much to do with social media and feeling free to post whatever you want on Instagram, post whatever you want on YouTube, and etc. But it very quickly became clear to me that that's just one avenue where creativity can flow. But creative freedom is actually uh, a way of being where who you are is flowing out of you. It can be onto social media channels and platforms, but it can also be when you're walking down the sidewalk. It can also be when you're sitting alone in your room. It can also be when you're hosting a meditation class or a community call. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that creative freedom is something that people have to claim, or is it just like inherent, like a right and something that everyone has access to, but needs to be awakened to the access to it?
Definitely everybody has it within already, 100%. Um, it's really just being. If you're just being, you're in a state of creative freedom. I think it's our inherent way of being. The work that needs to be done to uncover it is, I see as more of a unlearning stuff that has gotten in the way of that natural way of being and expression.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's beautiful. With the people that you've coached and the community that you're nurturing, is there like a particular thread or a fear that you notice where people get stuck on that journey?
There are many, there are many common ones. So at the end of the day, I think the same kind of root fear manifests in these common scenarios. So just one example is a fear of judgment from others. So a fear of what friends and family might think if I express myself fully and freely. Um, this can also manifest in like fear of what coworkers might think, fear of being ostracized, this sort of thing. They all kind of relate to this root fear of um, there's a lack of like inner security and inner love that's pushed out onto other people, basically. So it's all coming, all these fears are coming back to this root fear, which it's like the primordial root fear of I'm not enough, or if I am, if I am myself, if I show myself, I'll be ostracized or something like that. So yeah, these primordial root fears manifest in these very common ways.
Yeah.
Fear of judgment is a big one.
Absolutely. Like that's actually one that you and I have worked on a lot with again, like social media is just like a mirror. It's really empty of a nature as we know, but like it's a mirror. So I was realizing, I was telling you in one of our sessions that like Instagram just doesn't feel good. And you kind of like kept prompting me to like dig a little deeper and trying to understand why it didn't feel that great. And what I discovered was mainly the people who know me or people who know me from like what it feels like an old version of me or an old identity that I no longer feel like I fit in. It became like me trying to keep up with this old version and like coworkers. being afraid that they were seeing me expand in any sort of way and stuff. And it's funny because I last year I was like spending all my time on YouTube and TikTok. And then as soon as you helped me discover that that was just like a fear of my own judgment of the people closest to me, it made me want to show up on Instagram so much more and work through that fear. We talked about in the past, like I deleted TikTok and I was like, this is where the work needs to be. Like where it's uncomfortable showing up the most is where I can grow the fastest and I can really like just go into sixth gear with like expansion is like sitting in that discomfort and showing up despite the fear existing there. And that's something I really appreciate that I think you've helped a lot of people do that.
Yeah, that's a very common one as well.
Yeah.
People are specifically scared of Instagram.
Does it still scare you at all, or are you like, have you completely shed that?
Well, kind of like the reflection you gave about me at the beginning as this like mysterious enigma. I feel like I've already like pretty much lost everybody on Instagram who's been following me. So like I think I think I've already solidified in the identity of someone who's just going all over the place and expressing whatever. So I don't think that I don't feel beholden to an identity on Instagram anymore.
Mhm.
But still acutely when I'm posting, I'll still have these fears coming up. And then it's so interesting. It can be so fun to think about why is it so much easier to feel free on TikTok?
Yeah.
So I can still feel that difference there, which is very, very fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. So one thing that I wanted to dig into today that feels like something very much happening in tandem in my life is your exploration of your Walden year. And I'd love if you could share like one, how do you define your Walden year and like what is like the first domino effect that kind of put the Walden year into motion?
Great question. So the Walden year. So Walden is a book by Henry David Thoreau,
Mhm.
where he sets out to live in the woods for 2 years, I believe. And he builds his own cabin and he basically wants to see, can I survive and be happy with as little as possible? Like, can I escape this society matrix? And it's a fascinating book. And he talks about how um, everybody wants to buy this house, but actually, it seems like once you buy the house owns you, the stuff owns you. And I've been kind of as I've been going through this sort of process of general awakening. So you asked when did what was the first domino? The first domino was like 5 years ago when I started meditating. And then I started to see, whoa, I'm surrounded by a life and all these things and these objects that I just inherited the belief that I ought to accumulate these things and build this life without actually deciding for myself. So there's been a slow process of unraveling. And then more acutely this year, um, there's been meditation, that's a domino. Alcohol falling away has been a domino. Weed falling away has been a domino. And as my mind and consciousness gets more clear with the meditation, without these substances, I'm just seeing very clearly I'm in this apartment and there's all these objects that are distracting my attention and consuming my energy, and I don't even want them.
Hmm.
And there's almost like a visceral repulsion. And it's not just the physical objects, it's also how I'm spending my time and energy, what events I'm going to, who I'm hanging out with. So there's just a clarity of mind as I'm going through this awakening where I'm seeing what's unnecessary. I'm going off here, but
Oh, we're riding, George.
yeah, I'm seeing all these things that are unnecessary, and I'm also putting this piece together that, wow, it's taking time, energy, and financial resources to sustain this life that I'm now being viscerally repulsed by. So
Mm.
let me just shed all of it and see. First of all, it's fun for me because I'm very spiritual. It's almost like a monk-like practice. I get to like, I'm so curious, like, what would it be like to just sit in an empty room
Yeah.
for long periods of time? It's exciting. And then I'm also freeing up time, energy, and financial resources. And I'm like, wow, what's going to come in that space that opens up?
Yeah, that's amazing. Have you ever been to that cabin? And because there's actually in college, I went to Brandeis and there's Walden Pond in Massachusetts, and there's like the cabin still. I hope it's still there, but the cabin's still there, and it's funny. I used to do walks around the pond and stuff, and it was just like there's some weird mystical little cabin, and it's funny that you mentioned the. I didn't realize that that was the connection was the book where he wrote that. But I'm curious if you've ever sat in that cabin before.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I probably should go.
Yeah. With as little of a like as little packing as possible. Just bring, not even bring your phone, just bring a little pen and paper and you're set.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, since you mentioned that, I got to say one more thing.
Yeah.
The Buddhist death contemplations that we went over, I'm sure you went over too at meditation teacher training, but one of them is like a hiker who's traveling many miles is not going to bring around a lot of useless junk. So that kind of ties into this Walden experiment that I'm doing, where it's like we're on a journey, we're on a long hike metaphorically in this lifetime. I'm really curious what it would be like to not carry around a lot of useless junk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was something I've been experiencing as well is the cost of things is very little to do with the monetary cost, but like the soul tax that you're paying for every item. And one of the dominoes for me in like the letting go and releasing, and for me, it's like it comes in waves. Like I can never properly, like when you think you've gotten rid of enough, you always realize you can go back and like keep like editing in waves. But for me, one of the dominoes was like a book by Light Watkins. He writes a book called Travel Light, which is all about spiritual minimalism, and he talks exactly about that. If like if you want to go on a journey, you gotta just take the essentials. And he starts with like just a carry-on case that can fit on an overhead compartment, and then he realizes after a few trips that all he needs is a backpack, and then he realizes the backpack is getting too heavy, and he keeps like it's like you don't know until you keep moving forward that you actually need less and less and less. And can you describe kind of what the what's happening in your emotional state when you're releasing the physical external world?
Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of intense. It's like the way I see it is literally every physical object I let go of, there are there is a past identity of me entangled with that object. So if I'm holding a book or a journal in my hands and I'm ready to declutter it by recycling it or leaving it out on the stoop, I'm actually coming into contact with the version of me that read that book and was inspired and experienced some awakening by that book, or that version of me that wrote that journal and was really in that. And same with an object, like it could be a little nightstand. If I'm selling that on Facebook Marketplace, I'm experiencing the version of me who lived and slept next to that nightstand. So it literally almost feels as though when I leave this book out on the stoop or I hand this object over to someone and they hand me some cash, it's like it almost feels like there's a letting go of that past identity, and there's a grief experience in that. And it can be very, very emotional, but also very beautiful.
Yeah, no, that's so funny you mentioned grief because my follow-up question was very specific to grief because I remember in one of your newsletters you wrote that you don't feel like you've had experience, you don't feel like you've fully grieved the loss of your things. Do you feel like that moment is you feel it looming, like it's coming closer to you, or do you feel like there's a world where you don't even truly have to grieve?
I think, I guess my perspective on it now is that there's kind of, because I'm in this intense process of shedding now. It's happening now. And there's kind of this, there's this active but not intense grief every day, kind of at all times, as I'm like continuously letting go of things. But I think when I wrote that, I had like suddenly and unexpectedly felt ready to sell all of my YouTube gear. And I was like a full-time YouTuber for many, many years. And then all of a sudden those objects were gone. And I was like, wow, I didn't really feel that. It just kind of slipped away. So then I was like, oh, there's going to be a big wave of grief coming. But it's kind of been more of a steady grief thing. And I think like I can envision myself when I'm in a new, living situation with much less stuff. It might hit me in another wave, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like you can't schedule when grief is
Right.
and it's gonna hit you maybe when you're at the laundromat and you just gotta be ready for it when it comes. Um, Beautiful. I also wanted to ask you, kind of switch gears a little bit, but I wanted to ask you if you're in a relationship right now and specifically how has like your spiritual journey and path like reshaped how you view like romantic love and commitment? Specifically, even just thinking about you getting rid of things and like, I don't know, inviting someone over for a date or whatever, but I'm just curious about that part of George Poulos's life.
Yeah, great question.
Very
So
nosy.
it's funny because it gets very complicated because as I'm shedding these objects, I'm like seriously debating getting rid of my mattress. And then I'm thinking about what if I'm going to invite somebody to stay over
Mhm.
and then I'm like and then they see the yoga mat that I sleep on, you know. Um
They might,
anyway,
yes, your apartment is slowly turning into serial killer's like a little bit, just in a very loving way. But yeah, so how do you grapple with that?
yeah, I'm still grappling with that. And then to answer your question specifically, I'm not in a traditional romantic relationship at this time. I have been in many in the past, and it's definitely a deep topic of spiritual inquiry for me. And I've paid close attention to I've paid close attention to my journey there. I've been through a lot there. I could say a lot. I could say a lot.
Yeah. Um, do you feel like your understanding of romantic love has shifted at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, so my so okay. Back to this long, large scale awakening I'm talking about where I lived a life that was not my own just because that's just what I thought you did. That's the same way I went into romantic relationships growing up.
Yeah.
I just followed the model. I followed the model of what I thought it was supposed to look like. And each time I've had several girlfriends throughout my life, and each time I did that and followed the model, it just never sort of aligned with my being long term. And so as I grew older and started to meditate, I got really curious and started to really investigate that and started to realize maybe this model that I've been following doesn't quite isn't quite right for me. And in a way, I still think I'm in an active investigation and unraveling of that process.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for for sharing that. I wanted to also ask, I'm trying to just like also take in what you're saying because there's like a lot of hidden stuff in between the words.
Yeah, you can ask more. It's just such a big
Oh yeah,
romance is
it is a big topic. Um, yeah, I think spirituality is, I think one question I'm always curious to ask people who are on a very deep spiritual journey is it important that someone that you bring in to your traditional or non-traditional idea of a relationship, like, is it important that they are on a similar path as you? Like, or do you think that's just like inherent in how you connect to people now?
so it's a good question. So here's kind of how I'm seeing relationships in general right now. It's not up to me. Um, People are going to come into my life, and whether or not they enter my life, and whether or not there is a weak to strong connection, and however involved we become, is not up to me. It's a these are sort of divine assignments, and they're all extremely purposeful. So I've reached a point where if there's a severe misalignment, like if I go on a date with someone and they are thinking about a sort of traditional relationship escalator, marriage, children, this is going to make me happy. It's very clear to me that I should not get involved with that because of the experiences I've been through. Um, so there is a level of like discernment that I've developed, but ultimately, if there's going to be a connection, I see it as largely being outside of my control.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you want to move in with someone and you find out they're a hoarder or something, that might not be spiritually aligned.
Right.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've found those traditional paths are not for you through like a deep knowing, or do you think that there's a world where that is like ever changing, just like how your relationship to creative freedom is change, is there a world where you're open to maybe whatever divine partnership ends up happening, if maybe you change your mind, is there like an openness there, or is there just like a deep knowing and sense of like that path is no longer for me, so finding someone who wants that just wouldn't make sense?
No, there's always an openness.
Okay.
There's always an openness. And it's it's like you might find me, we might catch up in 20 years and I'm in a situation that looks exactly like what I'm saying I'll never do.
Be like, haha, George, got him.
That's definitely possible. But what I think I've sunken into now is if that were to happen, it will very much arise from alignment.
Mm,
So I would expect that there would be some sort of a spiritual alignment there.
yeah,
I think what I've overcome is this grasping and trying to make a relationship work that isn't meant to be. It's much more surrendered. So there really is an openness to anything, and it would arise sort of from the universal intelligence if that's in my higher path.
yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. Um, can I ask one last question around romantic?
Yeah.
Has your, I guess, experience of observing the love from in your family dynamics, has that influenced how you, I mean, I feel like that's a very loaded question because it's like, of course, like our family and our parents influence us in subconscious ways and a lot of the times, but Is that has that played a lot into how you know, like how how you understand what you want versus what you don't want?
I absolutely think so. And the first thing that comes to mind is I think I won the lottery with my parents, to be honest, and it took me a long time to see that and be able to claim that. But
Mhm.
especially now in adulthood here, the way that they love me is very, very steady
Mm.
and non-grasping, non-controlling, just steady love and open space. So I think that that has actually really rubbed off on me, where I have learned through their example to love people by just being a steady, open presence. Now, this doesn't, where I've fallen into trouble is this a lot of times doesn't align with traditional relationships where there can be an expectation of if we're going to be in a romantic relationship, then you have to fulfill X, Y, and Z for me. Whereas I've learned to love by just being this steady presence. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting because one of my questions for you today, I was going to ask this later, but we're here. So I wanted to ask, like, what are the ways you want to be loved? And it doesn't necessarily mean romantic. And I think what you're saying is just a beautiful dive into that of you want something that's steady and just solid. It has like there's a groundedness to it. And I think what I've been trapped in with romantic relationships and people pleasing is that addiction to the highs and lows and like just needing a little bit of the chaos in that relationship to sustain a relationship which it can a relationship cannot sustain off that kind of high like high highs and low lows. And then as I've gotten older, that steady, calm love has been the quiet love that doesn't scream from the rooftops and isn't grand or maybe isn't big enough to write a screenplay or a play about is like the love that is, I think, the most rare and the most precious type of love that is like all consuming and so true, is not the ones that we see, and we don't see examples of that. So I'm curious, like, to ask you, George, like, how do you want to be loved, and what are the ways that you want to be loved?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yeah, yeah, it's a great question. You got me thinking now, actually.
Time.
But I'll tell you what does not work for me
Mhm.
to start. What does not work for me is a dynamic of heavy expectation
Mhm.
and a dynamic of basically, okay. I feel as though I've gotten to a point where I'm kind of on a mission here on this earth, and I'm devoted to that mission.
Mhm.
And so a love that demands that I leave that path will no longer work for me. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier, like the if there's going to be that traditional looking relationship, it's going to arise out of alignment. And what I mean by alignment is I'm staying on this path that I'm describing. So at this point, if I form a connection with someone and there are requests and demands and asks, which is nothing wrong with that. That's this person's preference and what they want. But if it's pulling me off of my course here, that connection's just going to fall away very seamlessly and harmoniously because I'm committed to being who I am here. So in terms of what I'm looking for, there needs to be a high value in freedom and autonomy. and an understanding that that can coexist. This is very hard to find, I'm learning. And understanding that that can coexist with a the deepest form of love and togetherness that there is.
Yeah. That's like, yeah, that's the rarest kind of love to find. The love that's devotional yet free. And it's it's easier said than done, but it's like I think the more we become that for ourselves, the easier we like the more we attract those types of different energies as well.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something interesting.
Mhm.
And very few people understand this when I try to explain it to them. But it depends on who's listening, obviously.
Ears are open, George.
Um so my previous partner and I, we broke up I want to say 6 months ago now. And we had to break up because we were it was the sort of relationship where there was not that freedom and autonomy that we needed. We were pulling each other off of our course. Now that I see that we've very maturely broken that pattern and we have quote unquote broken up, I see that actually our love and our relationship is much deeper now. There's so much more there now. In a way, it's perfect. In a way, it's now the perfect relationship, even though we've broken up. And so I don't really, I don't really believe in breaking up. I do believe in it as like a worldly thing. Like, okay, you spend less time, you don't talk as much, you split your belongings, whatever. But what I actually see happening there is the relationship is it's returning to the form that it's meant to be in. And so, um, in a way, what I see is that there can be infinite, harmonious relationships, which are all perfect. And to make that happen, one must honor essentially the boundaries that we need to set so that we can stay on our individual path. Then all these relationships can exist on that path harmoniously and perfectly, is what I see.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I agree with that 100%. I also think that there is no greater teacher than I don't even like to call them exes, but like, a past relationship is like is so like they're your teacher. They teach you everything you need to know to be able to step into the next um moments, the next openness of love and or whatever it is that's in store for you. Can you share what your past relationship, like what was maybe something your past partner taught you that stays with you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I first of all, I just love her so deeply. I just do, and I still do, and it's really beautiful. Um, and I really feel that she's still with me, and she always will be. And I think maybe one of the greatest lessons I learned through her and that relationship is what I'm describing now,
Mm.
is that love can exist without codependency, is what I'll say that concisely and leave it there.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, George.
Mhm.
Can you tell me about a time that you surprised yourself and w- like when you unearthed something that you didn't think you had inside of you?
Very interesting question. Um, I think my whole I think my whole journey is surprising the jeebers out of me.
A whole enchilada.
Yeah, like I'm surprised that I got into meditation. It's so counter to who I thought I was. Um, I'm surprised that I'm surprised that I'm so dedicated to the spiritual path. I never expected that. I'm surprised. I'm surprised that I never give up year after year. It's like so, whatever is happening here is so challenging, but I seem to never give up. I'm surprised. Um, I'm surprised I did meditation teacher training. I'm surprised I let go of my YouTube cameras. Um,
Have you sold the YouTube plaque yet?
yep,
You did. Amazing.
yep,
What was that feeling like when you and for anyone listening who doesn't know, George um has a plaque from YouTube that's given once you reach 100,000 followers, correct?
yep.
You've obviously surpassed that audience size on YouTube. And George, I don't know if you know this, but you're the reason I started doing meditation teacher training because I started following you on YouTube, and one of your YouTube episodes that was right when you were like you had completed MTT meditation teacher training, you started kind of completely changing and shifting the content that you were posting from like skate content, which would not have hit my algorithm at all, to meditation conversations. And I just happened upon one of your videos and started watching, and you mentioned three jewels, and then I Googled three jewels and I signed up for meditation basics training in January. And there you were in class.
Yeah.
You were one of the teacher assistants, and I think like the third week or so, Hector, who leads this incredible training, called upon you to do a meditation. And I remember you getting on the mic and saying, I'm terrified of doing this. And the moment you said that, I fell madly in love with you. I was like, oh, yeah, he's the one. And you led us through a beautiful meditation, and the rest is history. And it inspired me to stay. It inspired me to find this community. So long-winded way of saying like you're a huge reason why I did MTT. And um yeah, I don't even know where we were going with that, but I needed to share that with you because you created this chain reaction for me that I don't even think you're aware of.
Yeah. So that's beautiful, and I'm receiving chills as I received that from you. And you know, I think it was in the book called The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn, where maybe in this book, but there's this idea she presents where it's like every person is a golden link in your chain to your highest good. And I see this grand psychedelic vision of like, because I had to have MTT angels reach me and put MTT into my mind, you know. And but it's not just MTT, it's like I think what we're talking about is sort of truth. Like there are angels like trying to connect with us and show us these higher paths to our higher selves, and it'll come when you least expect it. And when I hear you telling me that, it's like, wow, there was so much fear around leaving the skateboarding persona behind and leaving that YouTube persona behind. And we came to this because of the YouTube plaque. Um, there was so much fear, but then this example just goes to show that when you have an intuition and a heart pulling to do something, you're not going to really know why. You're not going to be able to really rationalize why. But here you are, and you were impacted by my decision to make that change. So it's like that's when you find that, that is everything. And that's why we got to follow our callings, really.
100%. Well, yeah, to kind of bring it back to the plaque, which is really just a symbol of your old identity. It's interesting that your plaque is about acquiring, 100,000 followers, and you've also shared very openly on your channels about losing thousands and thousands of followers. So like one chapter of your old identity was like steeped in acquiring, right? And it's kind of like very meta with even your belongings right now in your Walden year of acquiring things, attaining followers and just getting more and more and more. And now you're in this era of like releasing and realizing that the releasing is actually giving you a lot more freedom. What was it like letting go of that plaque? And what did that moment feel like for you?
Yeah, so it felt easy. It felt easy. Also, to give you some context, my ex-partner and I moved into this apartment. I've been paying double rent. And this is one of the things that's like obviously is not making it to the next chapter. So I'm preparing to move and I'm selling stuff, and it feels nice to receive this money to help me cover the mistake I made by staying in this apartment and paying rent I can't afford. So it felt good to see. I had two people in a bidding war on Instagram, and it felt good to see the price going up and up and up. I was like, oh, cool, this is going to help me out a little. And then it was sweet and nostalgic to see that past version of me who is truly long gone and doesn't exist anymore. He does exist in a way in these other people's minds. And he exists in such a profound and special way for them that they wanted to purchase this object. So there was something cool and nostalgic about that. I like felt, yeah, I felt this wave of emotion. I'm just like, oh yeah, I poured my life force energy into this project for many, many years, and it stuck with people. Um, but then overall, it was kind of easy to it was kind of easy to let it go. I mean, it's been collecting dust in the closet for a while.
Yeah. It's interesting. It always, that moment, it kind of reminds me of like a Jim Carrey quote where he famously says, I wish everyone could be rich and famous so they could realize that it's not about being rich or famous. And he talks, one of my favorite things is I grew up watching like the Oscars and the Golden Globes, and Jim Carrey would sometimes like do little sketches and like little introductions to a category, and he would always just kind of mock this obsession that we have with attaining like Oscar nominated, Oscar award-winning actor so and so. And it's like this huge attachment that we have to that. And um, I think it's kind of beautiful that it was meant to be that you attain something like that at such a young age because you have so much more life knowing, having those secrets that I think a lot of people they go to their grave wanting to attain that YouTube plaque or that, Oscar, whatever it is that they're chasing, only to realize that that was not going to fulfill them in any way. And it was just going to be another thing that collects dust in our homes. So I think it's such a beautiful thing that you get to not only shed that object, but I think doing it publicly is very important. Sharing that piece of your story, you don't really, to what you said earlier, you don't know the effects of sharing that story will have on the other person who is obsessively refreshing their YouTube channel and trying to see how many followers they're getting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And it's to this day, it's still challenging for me sometimes. It's getting mu the shadow is really starting to disappear, but it still can be tough to post on that channel and see all the subscribers dropping from the old era. And yeah, it can be challenging, but like I do, it's just you're right. It truly is like how you're describing is another way in which I've won the lottery. Like I getting to that amount of subscribers on YouTube for me was the equivalent to reaching the pinnacle of material success, like house in the hills, beachfront, whatever. Like for me, it was getting 100K on YouTube, and I got to taste that. And yeah, I hit my renunciation because I realized it doesn't lead to everlasting happiness. It's not there. It's inside.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with the world. I think we need that message now more than ever, especially on this, like, and I think the next generation, a lot of people want to be creators, and what a successful creator looks like is a very particular thing, like very results driven, very numbers driven, and quantifiable. But I think what you're doing is very anti that, which I think it's more powerful to come from a place of having attained it and then shifting to the anti of all of that to versus just being able to tell people like, hey, you don't need this thing. I think it just comes from a different place of credibility, being able to have already felt what it feels like to attain the Malibu house version of your success. Beautiful. One thing I wanted to kind of touch on as well is you also share a lot about your habits. A lot of it, I don't even know how to explain it, but you share a lot of screenshots of your habit tracker, but a lot of your habits are about not doing things. So, for example, not smoking weed or not drinking caffeine, which is a huge one for me because yeah, that's when I cut caffeine out a year ago, and that completely changed my entire world, and my anxiety and my nervous system, period. But um, another one that I wanted to touch on is not watching porn. Um, so I was just curious, like, where did that first habit tracking start, and how did you feel about openly sharing, like, the things that you're trying to stay away from openly?
Yeah. So I would say 2 years ago, when I started to get serious about meditating every day, is when this thing was sort of born. And then I did like 100 days. This was a couple of years ago of meditation, and I enjoyed seeing the counter and being able to post it on Instagram to share with people. And then at that time, I also did my first swing of attempting sobriety. And that was a very beneficial and fruitful time in my life. And I enjoyed the visual on my phone of seeing the trackers. And I enjoyed, I'm a creator. I can't help but like share what I'm learning and going through. So it was nice to just be able to pop a screenshot and be like, hey guys, this is something I'm trying in my life. Here's where I'm at, here's how it's going, etc. Um, so then that was very fruitful and beneficial to try that 2 years ago. And then I came around to it again some 100 days ago now. My highest streak right now is no alcohol, which is over 200 days. Meditation is pretty high up there too, and no weed is pretty high up there. But so I started again, which with much more commitment and energy because I saw the benefits the last time. I saw how when I gave up on these habits, thing kind of fell apart. I feel like I'm losing my train of thought here, but there's something really profound for me about these disciplined practices. Um, uh, I'll just say that the more that I abstain from these different things, the more I feel like I am able to connect to a frequency of God, a frequency of deep stillness and tranquility. And I'll leave it there and see what follows. Yeah, I feel like I was kind of rambly there.
No, you're perfect. Yeah, I think, well, one I wanted to share, like, ask maybe a follow-up is the caffeine thing, right? So you were on a streak with no caffeine, and then I think recently you shared that you did, I don't want to say relapse, but you had some caffeine, and then that gave you a lot of clarity on the effects of the caffeine. in your body, in your spirit. Like, could you share kind of what that experience was?
Yeah. So again, without alcohol, without weed, and with daily meditation, my consciousness is getting really clear.
Hmm.
So I did 9 days, no caffeine. And then I had two coffees 2 days in a row. And it was this euphoric return. I felt like I was back in the world, all of this. But then I realized there was something manic about this energy and something rushed about this energy. And literally, if I can visualize this graph, there was this wavelength I was on of deep, deep peace and trust and flowing with my natural rhythms. And then as soon as I had one cup of coffee, it's like, whoa, I'm rising up to this different wavelength. And now I'm actually with all these people in the cafe. It's like it's unspoken, but I'm like, whoa, I'm with you guys. I'm with this buzzing, running society. Like I'm here, I'm in it. And that felt very good for a moment. But then I realized, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't think this is where I want to be. I think I kind of want to be at this more tranquil frequency. So it was fascinating to
That's so,
experience that.
that's so interesting because it reminds me of how you described how you want to be loved.
Interesting.
Because you were talking about how the caffeine, even though you're connected, you're having this like moment of like electric electricity, right, happening inside your body and this connectedness. What you want is the steady love, right? So it's really interesting to see those parallels between how you describe you want to be loved versus like also how you put what you put into your body is a indicator of how you want to be loved as well.
That's it's very cool to hear you reflect that. I didn't notice that, but I see it. Yeah.
Um, I wanted to also touch on pornography because that is something that is very important for me to share and something I think for maybe years I've wanted to share on YouTube or some like before I even knew what being an authentic, honest creator was online. I have struggled at different points in my life with porn addiction, and I know a lot of I have a lot of male friends and who struggle currently or have in the past with porn addiction. But I think I've always had this deep desire to share it because I don't see women talking about it at all, like ever. And I don't see a lot of men wanting to talk about it either. But so here we are talking about breaking the seal. And I just find it so incredible that you are sharing that part of your habit tracking as well, because there could be a lot of shame association with sharing that, right? So I was curious because I've had moments where I don't think I've ever actually counted or tracked the streaks and stuff, but there have been moments where when I was not watching porn, I was so much more able to connect with my own body and with also into like be able to really truly be with someone intimately. I noticed such a huge connection with like the amount of porn I watched and like how much I enjoyed actual sex with someone or intimacy with someone. And when I was watching or not watching porn, then my ability to show up in that physical way was totally completely different of being able to surrender and be relaxed and feel safe and all of those things and be more expressive versus performative of like all this stuff I was watching I was just trying to recreate in relationships as a people pleaser and all of that. So I was curious if you noticed what's shifting in you with no pornography.
Yeah, massive,
Yeah.
massive. Um, so like many men, I started watching porn at a very young age, and just didn't think, never thought anything of it, but it was really a daily thing for like my entire life. Um, and yeah, it just hit a point. So I want to connect it to sort of everything. All of these habits, the reason I'm quitting them is because there's this for me with the alcohol, with the weed, there's this I'm escaping using this thing. There's some primordial pain that's arising in the boredom, in the nothingness. So let me drink, let me smoke, let me watch porn, let me scroll on social media. And what I'm noticing is in general, and then I'll touch on porn more specifically, as I eliminate these things and sit through the primordial pain of existence, I'm having deeper and deeper connection with myself, more profound awakenings, more profound clarity of consciousness. And with that clarity of consciousness, I'm able to express myself, create, teach my classes, do all the things, relate with other people in these such in these much more potent ways,
Mhm.
potent, focused, aligned. Okay, so they're all connected there. And then when it comes to porn, yeah, I mean I believe that it rewires your brain and it makes you I'll just speak for myself. I think it made me scan the world in like a more sexually oriented way, like in a I want to again, it's consumptive relationship. Like I want to
Mhm.
um have these like get something from these people. And then so it just hit a point where it was just like, yeah, this can't come with me anymore. And then in general, I think there's something that happens where there's a retention of that energy. And then it can be instead of wasting it on pornography, it can be channeled into healthier and more productive. I don't know if that's the right word, but better ways. Okay. So this can be through real relationship, real connection. Again, I even think the energy wasted on pornography can be channeled into a higher purpose. It doesn't necessarily need to be channeled into sex with another person, although it can. And I've certainly by eons of light years, my relationship with sex has improved since eliminating pornography. Um, I want to tie it to one more thing, which is just sitting in silence is something I've been doing more and more and more. And on a similar wavelength, I'm noticing that. So instead of agreeing to go to every party and every hangout and all of this, and I'm sitting in more silence, and that's creating a similar retention of energy. It's like charging up my energy. So then when I go into my week and align relationships and host my classes and create my content, it's all just this fiery outpouring.
Mhm.
So you porn is one way that we can waste and divert that
And,
energy.
and yet it's still energy and potent energy that we can channel in more useful ways for our creativity. It's interesting because um uh one of these psychotherapists that I follow, Dr. K. I don't know if you follow him or hear his work on. He's like Healthy Gamer on YouTube.
Oh
He
yeah, yeah.
talks, yeah, he talks a lot about porn addiction and how, yeah, the rewiring of the brain and also how the main reason people watch porn, who are people who are addicted to it, who watch it regularly, is because they have a feeling of life is pointless. And so it's just another numbing pattern, right? It's like people who feel like there is no purpose in their life. It's like kind of like a default programming that they go to when they're feeling those feelings, but they're suppressing it, right, by watching porn. And so when you release yourself from that, it's not that all of a sudden your purpose emerges out of, the sky or anything like that, but it's interesting that that life force can be used to also find your purpose. And he talks about that a lot, which I find really interesting. So anyone who's curious about kind of understanding that more, I really highly recommend his channel. Um, well, I love that you're connecting all the dots with all these different habits because they are essentially numbing patterns, which you talk about a lot in your newsletters and your writing. And there's one particular post that really stood out to me that you posted, I think like almost a month ago, like April 4th-ish. But you wrote, "My child self is afraid that if he expresses himself fully, he will be exiled or killed." And I think that this was a really prime example of a moment where I feel like you let us in real deep in that moment. It felt like a true moment of reckoning and a moment of vulnerability coming from you, George. And I think that share is so powerful. And the caption that you wrote was also very well written and shared so much of what was coming up in that fear. But can you take me back to that moment of when you realized that? Because I think you said something about this happened. You woke up like at 4 in the morning or something, and you had this big realization. And can you talk about what is helping you kind of stay with it and not running away from it?
Yeah, so I remember earlier I was talking about like, oh yeah, people are afraid that their friends are going to judge them when they post on social media. And then I mentioned the primordial fear. I believe it's this. I believe it's a fear of being exiled or killed if we are true. Like we're afraid we're going to die, basically. And it's a so yeah, I woke up with this realization, and it was like a visceral primordial realization, like as if a beam of electricity like shot into my ancestry, and I was like, whoa, my ancestors could not be themselves, or else they would be exiled or killed. And then I connected to this like, oh wow, this is real. Like this is real. Like when I'm on there on Instagram and something has sprung out of my heart and I'm like, now I'm second guessing it and I'm overthinking it, it is because there's a child within me who thinks he's going to be killed or ostracized, right? Or, or stoned or whatever. Um, and I remember in that moment of writing that, I was like, I was really just like, wow,
Yeah.
wow. And then it just, I don't know, it just poured out of me. It really just, it did. I'm actually grateful you're reminding me of this because it's almost making me feel like, oh, I am slipping into that fear again a little bit, actually. It's a continuous process.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting because it kind of landed on my feed like with the algorithms and stuff, like you don't always get things chronologically anymore. Sometimes you'll just see something from a few weeks ago. And funny enough, like that post was a new post on my feed this morning. And it
Mm.
really stopped me in my tracks because I was like, whoa, there he is. Like, holy shit. Like it really slap me on the face like in the best way possible. And it's kind of like I think a lot of people could have this fear but not be able to name it or call it because they will feel like it is being dramatic or like it's crazy or like it's crazy to think that because no one's holding a gun to your head or like you're not in danger or anything. But I feel like you were excavating for a long time, like what is the fear? What is the fear? And then you just like got to like you mined like the diamond that was hidden. You finally found that diamond that was hidden under all that debris. And you thought it was all these different fears, but it was like actually this fear that is so primal to like, a lot of the words you've been using to your experience, but it still exists, right? Like having the awareness doesn't necessarily mean that we're free of it completely. But yeah, that stopped me in my tracks and made me realize like I'm afraid of that very thing. So thank you for reminding us about that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And it is a diamond too. Not just to hear that and be like, oh, that intellectually makes sense. Like maybe that's my root fear, but to viscerally see that and feel that, there's something incredibly liberating about revealing that and bringing it to the light. It's heartbreakingly beautiful, really.
It is. And
And then, yeah, go ahead.
no, no, please go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like on the when I started doing the community calls and really learning to, drop the performance and just be myself and just try to help people. I realized like after those calls, it was so heavy and I was turning to those numbing mechanisms. And that's actually what started to make me realize this because I started to investigate why can't I just end the call and go on with my day? Why am I feeling so, um,
Depleted.
yeah, and then I was going to get pizza, which was a nice routine, but I was getting pizza after every call, and I was like, why am I getting pizza after every call? And yeah, that kind of helped uncover. I was like, yeah, I'm putting that kid who's afraid of dying into a situation that he genuinely does not know that he's going to be okay in.
Yeah.
And that happens every time I post on social media.
No, honestly, I remember a coworker last week asked me like, "Oh, wow, it really looks easy for you to post all the time and you're really putting yourself out there." And I was like, I am scared shitless every single time I post. I think, and I use the word, I think I'm gonna die anytime I hit post. And she looked at me like I was maybe just trying to like say that to like make her feel better. And I was like, no, it is so hard to show up as yourself. It is so hard to take off the mask and be yourself. But I also know the cost of wearing the mask is a cost I'm not willing to pay anymore. And
Yeah.
I notice once you take off the mask and you're willing to not perform and reveal yourself as rawly as possible, all of those things, like I caffeine falls away. Like I don't crave those things anymore. I don't crave watching porn because I don't like when you're steeped in like your own essence and you're not like relying on other things to like numb you because you're like, I'm in performance mode and now I'm gonna go numb. I'm performing and then I go numb. It's like this vicious cycle, but once you finally break and crack that openness of your heart that wants to be seen, then all of that stuff becomes also clear of like what roles are they playing in your life and and it becomes like your relation to everything changes when you're not wearing the mask anymore. But the fear thing is still there, and I don't know why. I don't know why it's there. I don't know why I feel like I'm gonna die every time, but it is so rewarding to do it anyway. Like what you get on the other side is so much greater than that fear.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's well, beautiful reflection there, Aisha. And I think it's like baked into our literally our ancestral like DNA. Like it's been encoded into us, but I do see that we have an opportunity in this life to um I don't know if we're going to completely eliminate it, but to be on this journey where we're going to keep choosing authenticity. And then what I see is to refer back to this psychedelic vision, this golden chain of humanity sort of uplifting each other. It's like when you're sort of committed to that fight, you just naturally start giving other people permission to do it too. And then so I see that I see that simply being authentic on social media is like a great service to humanity.
Yeah, that's so well said. It's like, yeah, it's medicine for everyone. but you don't do it because of that, because then that also feels very weird and transactional, but you just show up and it's a byproduct of you being authentic. Other people feel like they get the permission to do that themselves. Um, One of the questions I have for you, George, is what is this next chapter asking of you?
Great question. So right now, all that I know is that I'm being asked to shed everything that is no longer in alignment. And so it's terribly frightening because I'm not currently being asked to build or do. I'm simply being asked to shed. So it's actually quite frightening, but I have a sense that um I have this sense that if I can continue to listen to what I'm called to do and honor this shedding process and like, yeah, do it. Because there are moments of resistance where I'm like, ooh, am I really going to let go of this? And it can be an object, but it could also be a way I've been doing things. I
Even
have a,
your platform from school to Patreon, I feel like there was resistance to that as well.
yeah, exactly. Platform changes, things like this. There's just every day I'm like getting a new thing where I'm being asked, like, okay, it's time to shed this too. And I'm like, this too? Like, what's going to be left of me? But I have this feeling that when this process is complete, or maybe it's an ongoing, maybe this is life, this continuous shedding. But I feel like the essence of me is just going to be that's what's going to be left. And I, maybe that's it. Maybe then the work is done.
Or maybe
Or
work just starts. I
true, true.
think that's like, I feel like that's something Hector would say. The work is just beginning once you let go of everything. Um, I wanted to also ask if your future self could whisper something to you today, what would it say?
It's done.
I love it. You say
Yeah.
that a lot as well in the community calls, which I think I've gotten so much from that statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know. It just, yeah, that one's just been firing in my heart lately.
It's like your Nike slogan, just do it. It's done. Like, it is your, yeah, the ultimate thing, but beautiful. Is there anything else your heart wants to speak into today?
I kind of feel called to share with you, since you asked about my future self, that I recently had the most stunning vision of my future self.
Please share.
Um, and his name was Papa George, and he was this very peaceful spiritual teacher. And that vision has actually really impacted me. I was like, whoa, I didn't the future self has never come in that clear before. And that version of me has been guiding me.
Did you, did Papa George come to you like during a meditation or in a dream? Like where did the Papa George vision inception begin?
I think it was like another 3 a.m. wake up. So I don't know what's really happening there when that happens to me, but it's probably like a dream. And then suddenly it's so profound that I wake up
Mm.
and write it down.
Does did you get the vision in a very clear way of like seeing yourself like at an older age, or was it more of like a feeling that you got from that vision?
It was seeing myself at an older age. And what was striking, so I've been doing a lot of striving lately. what was striking about him is there was no striving. There was no striving. And him and his life was much simpler than I would have expected with all this striving that I was doing. Yet he had it all.
That's beautiful. I think what I'm learning with letting go is when you reach nothing is when you really truly know you are everything. When you completely let shed until there's literally nothing left. That's the moment where that infinite possibility like truly awakens. And that's what I'm experiencing through my shedding of things and beliefs and all of that. I wanted to ask George if you would be open and willing to, because I know online you do share your guitar playing sometimes. Would you be open to serenading us with a song that's on your heart today?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to go grab my guitar.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay, I'll be back. I don't know why that just changed by itself. Come a little bit closer, hear what I have to say. Just like children sleeping, we could dream this night away. But there's a full moon rising, let's go dancing in the light. We know where the music's playing, let's go out and feel the night. Because I'm still in love with you, I want to see you dance again. Because I'm still in love with you. Oops. You on this harvest moon. When we were strangers, I watched you from afar. When we were lovers, I loved you with all my heart. But now it's getting late, and the moon is rising high. celebrate. See it shining in your eye. Because I'm still in love with you. I want to see you dance again. Because I'm still in love with you on this harvest moon.
Thank you so much for that divine serenade. Um, Papa George would be very proud.
Yeah, that would plant good seeds for me because that was very scary. So um, that means that I've learned something. I've pushed a frontier actually in that moment. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was watching Last of Us last night and I was like, what? There was a scene where they're in the record store and Ellie's character is playing the guitar and that's the moment that like the other character falls in love with the like as she's playing the guitar, she like realizes that she's in love with Ellie. And it's just like I was thinking about you and like how every single post that you do when you play guitar, there's something there. There's like a texture there that I feel like you're scared, senseless about playing. And that is the very thing that I think draws people in, that makes people fall in love with you. So I wanted to give you a space to be able to have a little bit of that fear because when you share that and you still do it anyway, it's like, oh, that is like, I just want you to know that you're so loved in that moment. You're so, so deeply loved.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, George, for this conversation. I don't think there are enough flowers in the world to give to you for what you've done for me and how much you've changed the trajectory of all the things that I do. But I love you so deeply. And I'm so grateful that you are one of those angels and mentors and friends that showed up and the exact time I needed. So let's close with maybe we do another few breaths if you have a minute. So
Yeah.
close your eyes, place your hand on your heart. Maybe it's pounding a little bit faster after playing, but that's good. It's just letting us know that we're alive and we're human. Breathe in, exhale. Deep, deep gratitude for spending time together and opening our hearts so that the world can crack open a little deeper today. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to strive for, but to only let go of everything we think we are so that we can finally step into the truth. And release whenever you're ready. Thank you so much, George. This was so special, and I will make sure to link everywhere and anywhere you can find George online and all of your beautiful offerings with your community calls, which have transformed my life. Your mentorships, all of that, I'll make sure to link in the show notes. But I just really, this conversation is an offering in itself because it's really hard to put into words all the things that you share and give. But I think we nailed a couple of really, really beautiful nuggets that people can take with them and so that they can go off into their journey and find the diamond themselves and know that they are that diamond. But thank you so much, George.
Yeah, what an incredible gift to be in this container with you and to have this conversation. You're an incredible gift to this world, Asia. Um, and as are you listeners, you're an incredible gift to this world. So keep shining. I love you.
I love you. Stay soft, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.